Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something really unique today,
Yeah, this one's been fascinating to prep for.
the economic engine of the Maratha Confederacy.
Exactly. Not your typical empire, right?
You sent over some amazing sources, histories, economic analyses, even architectural studies I saw. The thing that jumps out, though, is the Marathas weren't this big centralized empire, uh, more like a web of semi-autonomous states. How on earth did they manage their economy like that?
It is a puzzle, especially when you compare them to, like, the Mughals, those giants.
Right. The Mughals. So how did the Marathas become such a powerhouse?
Well, that's the exciting part. It might just be that their decentralized system was actually key to their success. Think about it, resilience, flexibility, growth, not what you'd expect.
You're making me think differently about it already. And the sources you sent, they highlight the Maratha Confederacy's agrarian reforms, right?
It's like
Those were huge.
absolutely huge. The Ryotwari system, that one's a standout.
Okay, break that down for me.
Imagine you're a farmer. Instead of going through all these layers, middlemen skimming off the top, you pay taxes directly to the state.
Direct connection.
Exactly. More control for the farmer, more incentive to actually, invest in their land.
So it's not just about the state getting more money.
No, it's empowering individuals too. You can see it right there in those economic histories you sent over. Boosting state revenue, A&D, empowering people. Double win.
Genius. Okay, but then there's this Chauth system. You highlighted that.
Ah, the Chauth. Not just economics, though. Think power projection, too.
Okay, so fill me in.
The Marathas, they levied this tax on neighboring territories. Protection against raids. So as we talk about their trade networks, keep that Chauth in mind. Influence their relationships, their whole strategy.
Got it. Chauth adds another layer, not just simple trade. There's this strategic game going on.
Right, it's all connected.
Which makes me think about something. One of the sources mentioned pepper, major trade item. And then I thought about those Roman gold coins found in India. It just shows how interconnected global trade has always been.
It really does. It blows my mind to think about it.
But did that Roman legacy help the Marathas? Given their unique setup, I mean. Or did it actually make things harder?
You've hit on something really important there. Finding those coins, it reminds us how far back trade goes in this region. Muziris, for example, that port you highlighted.
Yeah.
Huge hub, centuries earlier, connecting India to the Roman Empire. Spices, textiles, precious stones all flowing through there. The Romans may be long gone by the time the Marathas come onto the scene.
But the trade routes, the networks, they remained.
Exactly, like inheriting a sister already in place.
Yeah.
And that gave them a boost, connecting them to the wider world. But they're real genius, fostering local trade networks within the Confederacy itself.
So pepper from the Malabar coast, reaching the Deccan Plateau.
Yeah.
Textiles from Gujarat to the Konkan. This was their lifeblood.
It was, more than economics even. Knitting together these diverse regions with shared interests, they didn't just passively benefit, they actively shaped and supported these networks.
Investing in roads, ports. They were serious about this.
Absolutely, and their fiscal policies, designed to encourage commerce. Which brings us back to the Chauth. It wasn't just about protection money, it was about creating a stable environment where trade could thrive.
Okay, so that's the Maratha approach.
Yeah.
But how did they compare to, say, the Mughals? They were much more centralized, right? Wouldn't that kind of stability attract merchants? Was it hard for the Marathas to compete on that front?
Fantastic question. Because it gets to the core of how they wielded power and controlled the economy. You're right. The Mughals, at their peak, vast, centralized system. On paper, that's an advantage. Dictate terms, collect taxes efficiently.
More stability, yeah.
Exactly. But that centralization also made them less flexible, in a way.
So the Marathas, with their decentralized setup, they could adapt to change faster, maybe even though they didn't have that Mughal scale.
Precisely. Imagine this. A local ruler wants to boost trade. They can cut deals, offer tax breaks, speed up routes to their port. They don't have to wait for orders from some far-off capital.
Startup versus big corporation.
Right.
I like that.
Marathas, they were agile, opportunistic, and remember, they weren't passively playing the game. They were shaping the rules. The Chauth system, extending their influence, controlling those trade routes. But here's something to think about. As the Mughals declined, their territory shrinking. Did that make the Chauth system more profitable for the Marathas? Or did it actually become riskier as new powers emerged, wanting a piece of the pie?
Ooh, good question. So we're not just looking at the Marathas in isolation. It's about how they fit into this bigger shifting landscape.
Exactly. Alliances, rivalries, power dynamics constantly changing. And the Marathas, they were masters of that game. adapting, maneuvering, seizing opportunities. It really is. And, when we look closer at their fiscal policies, the sources you sent, they show how sophisticated the Marathas were, especially given they weren't centralized. It wasn't just about collecting Chauth. They had a whole multi-pronged approach.
So brains AD brawn.
Exactly. Those agrarian reforms, especially the Ryotwari system, designed for a stable, predictable revenue stream, cutting out the middlemen, empowering farmers.
Investing in the foundation of their economy.
Precisely. A thriving agricultural base, that's the source of wealth that can flow into other areas.
Right, it all starts there.
It does. But they didn't just sit back and collect. They encouraged trade. Within the Confederacy, A&D, with partners outside, they knew a strong merchant class was key.
So not just warriors and tax collectors, they were actively promoting economic growth.
Absolutely. Using all sorts of tools to do it. Investing in infrastructure, roads, ports, everything to keep trade flowing smoothly. And those policies. Encouraging merchants to set up shop, offering tax breaks, protection from bandits, streamlined customs.
Creating a business-friendly environment. Competition, innovation.
You got it. And that's how they funded those military campaigns. The administration even became patrons of the arts. This blend of agrarian reforms, trade promotion, strategic Chauth, it all worked together.
It's mind-blowing, honestly. They did so much without a central treasury, a single point of control. It really shows how effective that decentralized system could be. But it couldn't have been all smooth sailing, right? I mean, relying on these semi-autonomous states. There had to be some downsides, too.
Oh, of course. Keeping things stable within a system like that, it was a balancing act for sure. Each state with its own priorities, expenses, they collected and managed revenue differently.
So the risk of inequality. Some states booming while others struggled. Breeding resentment, conflict.
Exactly. And those tensions did erupt sometimes, weakening the whole Confederacy. So they came up with ways to redistribute wealth, make sure resources were shared to an extent.
So some degree of equity. Trying to prevent one state becoming too dominant or another collapsing entirely.
Precisely. And that took a lot of work. Negotiation, diplomacy, this shared understanding that they were in it together.
It's fascinating how they managed that tension between regional freedom and collective responsibility. But I have to ask, how did this impact everyday people? Did the average farmer, the merchant, the artisan, did they feel the benefits of this system?
Now that's the question, isn't it? Going beyond the grand strategy to the actual lives of the people who made it all work. The sources you sent, they give us some clues. Take the Ryotwari system. Not perfect, of course, but the potential was there. Empowering farmers, giving them more control over their land, their income.
So at least in theory, a better standard of living for many farmers.
Exactly. And the focus on trade. Merchants, artisans producing goods for local A&D international markets. A thriving economy lifts everyone up, right?
Okay. Makes sense. Opportunity for all. But as we've said, no system is perfect. Were there people left behind? Those who didn't benefit from the Marathas' policies?
Of course. Those benefits weren't equally distributed. Those at the bottom, the lower castes, marginalized communities, they probably faced a lot of challenges, even with the Marathas being, relatively progressive for their time.
So those old social structures, the hierarchies, the inequalities, they persisted.
Unfortunately, yes. The caste system, with its rigid divisions, that was still incredibly powerful. The Marathas challenged some norms, especially in the military, but they couldn't dismantle those structures entirely.
A sobering thought. Economic progress doesn't automatically equal social equality.
Exactly. It reminds us to look beyond the big numbers, the overall picture. We have to examine the impact on all members of society.
The human cost. The experiences of those whose stories don't always make it into the history books.
Precisely. And don't forget about regional variations. The Maratha Confederacy was vast. Each semi-autonomous state had its own unique set of circumstances, resources, industries, social dynamics.
So a farmer in the Deccan Plains would have had a totally different life than, say, a fisherman on the Konkan coast or a weaver in a city like Pune.
Absolutely. It's like a mosaic, a tapestry, countless individual experiences woven together.
And that's what makes history so captivating, right? These grand narratives, empires rising and falling. But it all boils down to the lives of individuals.
Exactly. The human face of these events. Now, taking a step back, one of the key themes in your sources is that unique political structure of the Marathas, that decentralized system. It gave them flexibility, resilience, but it also came with some serious challenges.
They were always walking that tightrope, aren't they? Balancing central authority with regional autonomy? How did that play out in practice? Did it help them govern and expand or hold them back?
Such a fascinating question. It gets to the heart of their strengths and weaknesses, really. You see, this decentralized structure. It allowed them to adapt, seize opportunities quickly, but it also made it tough to maintain unity across such a massive, diverse territory.
The constant threat of fragmentation.
Hmm.
States putting their own interests ahead of the Confederacy.
Exactly. And history shows us how those internal conflicts weakened them, made them vulnerable.
Like a delicate ecosystem, a web of relationships that could easily be disrupted.
Perfect analogy. But the Marathas, to their credit, they were aware of these challenges. They developed ways to manage them.
What did they do? How did they hold it all together?
Well, there was the Ashtapradhan Mandal, a council of ministers advising the ruler, helping to administer the whole confederacy.
A kind of cabinet. Advisors from different regions, different areas of expertise, a platform for communication, coordination.
Exactly. This council ensured decisions weren't made in isolation. It fostered inclusivity, shared responsibility. And they had systems for redistributing wealth, providing military aid when a state was threatened, resolving disputes between states.
So rules, institutions, practices, trying to manage those centrifugal forces and maintain some degree of unity.
Precisely. And that's what makes them so remarkable. Regional autonomy and collective action. A delicate balance few empires ever achieve.
It challenges our assumptions about how power and authority work, doesn't it?
It does. And it shows their willingness to experiment, to adapt, to build a system that fit their unique circumstances. And that system, it wasn't static. It evolved, responding to pressures both internal and external.
Constantly tinkering, refining, trying to keep up with a growing empire, a changing world.
Exactly. Their military campaigns expanded. They had to develop better logistics, supply their armies, administer conquered territory. Their diplomacy got more complex, too, a web of alliances and rivalries in 18th century India.
Always learning, adapting their political ADD economic systems, trying to stay one step ahead.
Precisely. And that adaptability, that's what kept them going. They remained a major force for over a century, despite facing incredible challenges.
It's a story of innovation, adaptation, and just the sheer will to succeed.
It is. Now, zooming out to the wider picture, those interactions with other empires, other powers, that's a key part of their story, shaped their rise, their expansion, and ultimately their decline.
That chessboard, right? Alliances shifting, rivalries flaring up, new players entering the game.
Exactly. Their ability to navigate that, forge alliances, play sides against each other, it speaks to their political skills.
The sources you sent mentioned the Mughals, the British East India Company, all these regional kingdoms. Diplomacy, warfare, strategic maneuvering, all happening at once.
Absolutely. Their relationship with the Mughals, that one's particularly fascinating. So complex, so much back and forth.
I'm curious about that. The Mughals, at their peak, massive empire, powerful army. How did the Marathas, this young, decentralized confederacy, how did they manage to stand up to them?
It's remarkable, isn't it? It speaks to their adaptability, their ability to find and exploit weaknesses. You see, by the 18th century, the Mughal Empire was already in decline. Internal struggles, succession crises, a weaker central authority.
Opportunities for the Marathas.
Exactly. They had this highly mobile cavalry, mastered the terrain, willing to use hit-and-run tactics, formidable opponents even for the Mughal army, harassing them, disrupting supply lines, taking territory.
Avoiding those big battles they couldn't win.
Exactly. But it wasn't just military. They were skilled diplomats, too, forging alliances with Mughal nobles, regional rulers who were unhappy, weakening the empire from within.
Divide and conquer, classic strategy.
Exactly. And their success against the Mughals, carving out their own space, it inspired others to do the same, further fragmenting the empire.
A classic underdog story, showing that even a small, decentralized power can challenge a giant. It's about strategy, alliances, exploiting weaknesses.
Absolutely. And that success against the Mughals, it laid the groundwork for their own expansion, made them a major player. But it also set the stage for their clash with the British East India Company.
And that clash, that's a turning point, isn't it? The beginning of the end for their independence.
It was. The British East India Company, they were a whole new ballgame.
A game changer. Different goals, different strategies.
Exactly. Started as a trading company, but their power, their influence grew, driven by profit, this hunger for control over India's resources.
And they had the backing of the British crown, right? This wasn't just some rogue company.
Oh, absolutely. The full might of a growing empire behind them. New markets, new colonies. That was the goal.
So the Marathas, they're facing an opponent unlike any they'd seen before.
Yeah.
Vastly different resources, ambitions.
Exactly. At first, those interactions were cautious. Curiosity, suspicion, this desire to maintain their independence.
Feeling each other out, trying to figure out this new player.
Exactly. But as the company gained power, tensions rose. The Marathas, used to being dominant, they found themselves challenged. The company's military was stronger, their policies more aggressive.
And we can't forget technology. The British, they had the advantage there. Weaponry, naval power, tactics that the Marathas just couldn't match.
You're absolutely right. The technology gap, that was huge. The Marathas were skilled warriors, but against the company's firepower, their control of the
It
seas.
wasn't just a clash of empires, it was a clash of eras, almost.
I love that way of putting it. The Marathas, even with their ability to adapt, they were still operating within a more traditional framework. Cavalry, guerrilla warfare, regional alliances. The British, they represented this new kind of imperial power. Industrialization, technology, a global network of trade and influence.
It was a different game entirely. New rules, new strategies that the Marathas were struggling to grasp.
Precisely. And that mismatch, that fundamental difference in their approach to power and warfare, it was their downfall in the end.
It makes you wonder, though, what if they had adapted faster, embraced those new technology strategies? Could they have held on?
Historians still debate that. There were internal factors too, of course, succession struggles, rivalry between factions, weaker central authority. But the British arriving with their superior force, their relentless ambition, it was a turning point, no doubt, the beginning of the end for the Maratha Confederacy's independence.
A reminder that even the mightiest empires are vulnerable, especially when the world is changing and new powers are rising. But the Marathas, they left a lasting mark on India, didn't they?
Absolutely. Their impact on India, on its politics, society, culture, it's profound and incredibly complex. They challenged the status quo, brought new ideas about governance and warfare, and inspired generations of Indians with their spirit of resistance, their vision of an independent India.
They weren't just a blip on the radar. They were a force for change, a catalyst.
Exactly. Their legacy is multifaceted. Military achievements, administrative innovations, cultural contributions, and their impact on how Indians saw themselves.
The sources you sent, they talk about how they inspired later nationalist movements. That defiance of Mughal rule, the struggle against the British, it resonated with those who dreamed of a free India.
Absolutely. The Marathas, with their self-reliance, their warrior traditions, their resistance to outsiders, they became a symbol of Indian strength. A reminder that Indians could govern themselves, challenge empires, shape their own future.
More than just a historical entity, a source of inspiration, a symbol of hope.
Exactly. But it goes beyond that, too. They made real contributions to India's administration, its military, its culture.
Like what? What specific things did they do?
Well, their administrative system, even though it was decentralized, it was innovative. Their revenue collection, their judicial processes, their focus on local autonomy, all these things influenced later practices in different parts of India.
So they weren't just warriors and rebels. They were builders, administrators, laying the foundation for a better system of governance.
Exactly. And their military innovations, cavalry, guerrilla warfare, mobility, adaptability, these became central to Indian military thought. Other rulers copied their tactics. Even the way Indians resisted the British later on, that was influenced by the Marathas.
Trendsetters, shaping the military landscape of India.
Precisely. And their cultural contributions were significant too. The arts, architecture, literature, the Maratha style of architecture, for example, that blend of regional influences, the emphasis on functionality, you can still see it today.
It became part of the fabric of Indian society, adding to its richness and diversity.
Exactly. And perhaps most importantly, their spirit. That defiance, the determination to be independent, to forge their own path, that's what continues to inspire people.
They embodied resilience, this refusal to be controlled by others. It resonated then, and it still resonates now.
Precisely. And that, I think, is their most enduring legacy. The Maratha Confederacy might be gone, but their spirit, their values, their impact on the Indian people, that continues to shape India today.
It's been an incredible journey, really, exploring their economy, their politics, their culture, their legacy. What a story.
It truly is.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you new insights. The Marathas, even though they ultimately declined, they teach us so much about leadership, about resilience, about the power of unity, the importance of adapting to change.
Absolutely. History isn't just dates and names. It's about the experiences of people, communities, nations, all trying to make their mark on the world.
And by exploring those stories, by listening to those echoes from the past, we can understand ourselves and our world better.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep those minds curious.
Yeah, a strength turned weakness. It really is fascinating.
It's kind of tragic in a way. For a while, it worked brilliantly, right? They were so much faster than those big, slow empires.
Right, like the Mughals.
Exactly. The Mughals, they were this lumbering giant.
While the Marathas, they were a fleet of speedboats, like you said, zipping around, seizing opportunities. But then
They got bigger.
they did. They took on more territory, more challenges.
And that agility, that speed,
yeah.
it wasn't enough anymore.
It wasn't. It's hard to keep everyone on the same page, you know? Especially across such a vast territory with so many different people and interests.
The unity started to fray at the edges.
Exactly. And the central authority, well, it just wasn't strong enough to hold it all together. Those rivalries, those conflicts between different factions, different states, they became much more serious.
And their enemies, they saw an opening.
Of course, the British, other regional powers, they took advantage. They exploited those divisions, chipped away at the Marathas' power. It's a cautionary tale in a way.
It is. No empire lasts forever. Right. But the Marathas, even though they fell, they left such a mark on India.
Absolutely. Their impact is undeniable. Politics, society, culture, it's all there.
They shook things up, they brought new ideas, and that spirit of theirs.
That defiance, that determination.
It's inspiring, even today.
It is. It's like they planted a seed.
A seed that grew into something much bigger.
Exactly. Politically, even though their decentralized system didn't survive in its exact form, it influenced later leaders. It made them think about different models of governance, about regional autonomy, about sharing power.
So even though the Marathas didn't create a unified India themselves, they contributed to those ideas.
They did. That emphasis on local governance, empowering regions, finding a balance between central authority and local needs, that resonated with a lot of people, even under British rule. And after independence, those ideas were still part of the conversation about how India should be governed.
It's amazing how history works, isn't it? These echoes from the past.
It really is, but their legacy wasn't just political, of course.
Right, what about the military?
The Marathas, they changed how wars were fought in India. Their cavalry, their guerrilla tactics, their focus on mobility, on adapting to the situation.
Those innovations had a ripple effect.
They did. Other rulers learned from them, copied them, and even centuries later, during the struggle against British rule, you can see the influence of the Marathas.
So their military legacy, it wasn't just about specific tactics. It was about a whole way of thinking about warfare.
Exactly. And then there's the cultural side. The Marathas were patrons of the arts. They left behind some incredible architecture. Their literature is rich and vibrant.
It's like they poured their creativity into every aspect of life.
They did, and you can still see it today. The Maratha style of architecture, that blend of different influences, that focus on practicality, it's all over India.
A tangible reminder of their presence.
It is, but their most important legacy, I think, is intangible. It's that spirit of defiance, that determination to fight for what they believed in, to control their own destiny.
To be free.
Yes. Their story reminds us that even the most powerful empires can be challenged, that people will always fight for their freedom.
It's a powerful message, and it's one that has resonated throughout history and still resonates today.
It does. The Maratha Confederacy might be gone, but their spirit lives on.
It does. Well, this has been an incredible journey.
It really has.
Thank you so much for guiding us through the world of the Marathas, their economy, their politics, their culture. And thank you, listener, for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope it's made you think, made you curious to learn more.
We encourage you to keep exploring, keep digging into those sources, and see what other connections you can make.
Because history is full of surprises, and there's always something new to discover. Until next time, keep those minds curious.